Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Iowa Ideas Conference session called Youth Engagement with the Arts. So this is one that's very close and near and dear to my heart. I'm the arts and entertainment writer at the Gazette, and in my previous life, I taught youth theater classes for 25 years and was a youth theater director for 4 years. And my college senior project was developing a play, taking it on the road for young people. So this is right up my alley. And before we get started here, I'd like to give a thank you and a nice shout out to our conference presenting sponsor, ITC Midwest. And now let's just go around our virtual room here and introduce ourselves. Let's start with you, Eric.
Yes, my name is Eric Marshall. I'm the CEO of Orchestra Iowa.
Excellent. And Christine?
Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Herr. I'm the Executive Director of Artforce Iowa.
And Leon.
Good morning. My name is Leon Keener. I'm the Executive Director of the Iowa Alliance for Arts Education.
Oh, very cool. Well, what we're looking at today is that the kids of today are going to be tomorrow's artists and cultural patrons. And so one of the first things I'd like to talk a little bit about is how do we get them off their devices? I went to an event the other day and this kid sat across from his family and never looked up from his little handheld gadget. I don't know if he was watching a movie or a game, but he looked to be about 12 or 14 and looked like he was dying that he had to be there. So how do we get the kids unplugged? Eric, let's start with you.
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a couple different things that I think about what that is. Number one, it's not always about getting them unplugged, as maybe utilizing that device to help encourage what you're already doing. For instance, with our programs, now we put our program notes so you can read them directly from your phone. Instead of removing that device from their hand, it's like, what else can we use that device for to supplement what we're doing? Two, the other thing is like, what else can we put in their hand instead of the phone? Give them something else that they can get involved with. And I think a lot of our education programs are hands-on for that purpose. Is instead of a phone in your hand, give them some mallets, give them something that they can use their hands with to get that device there. And then of course, a lot of it comes and starts at the home. I have 3 kids myself, and so it's just this constant, hey, what are we doing at the home level to encourage them to get creative at home, and it starts with me putting my device down. They're mimicking what they're seeing. So when I'm having my device in my hand, what are they going to do? They're going to put their device in their hand too. So we really are intentional at our house about having this time to really connect without devices.
Very good. Thank you. Leon, you had some great thoughts on that the other day when we were having our preliminary chat.
Yeah, I think the one thing, since we work a lot with teachers, is first is just having engaging lesson plans. And I think one thing COVID taught us was when we had to do a lot of our fine arts education online, we realized there are a lot of technology tools that teachers can use. And I think it's the marrying of those two things, taking strong lesson planning and use the technology that the students are very, very comfortable with and connecting them together. And I think it's the idea of you using the technology is a tool. It's not the whole toolbox, but it's one of the tools that we can have in our toolbox as an educator to really provide that engaging experience for students at a young age all the way through high school.
Do you find that the teachers are comfortable with using technology now that we've come through the pandemic, where it kind of forced us all to be a little more savvy than we thought we could be?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was really interesting. I also worked with student teachers for the University of Iowa, and it was really interesting during COVID. Lots of times the student teachers were becoming the coaches to the more experienced teachers from the standpoint they were very comfortable with technology. And it was kind of like a reverse situation, but it was also a very positive situation as well, because I think a lot of it just made it's a necessity now. I think it's just a necessity because there's a lot of classes that are taught both in person and virtually. And I think that's just part of, again, another tool that the teachers need to have in their mailbox.
And Christine, tell us a little bit about what your organization does, because I'm not real familiar with that.
Yeah, so at Artforce Iowa, our mission is creating opportunities for youth to transform through art. So We work with 600 to 1,100 young people every year. And I know this is going to sound kind of crazy when I say this, but we have about 99 to most of the time 100% engagement. And the way we have that engagement is going back to what Eric and Leon both said, which is how do we use this thing that's in their hand as an enhancement? So it's like, hey, you want to draw this thing? Why don't you look at it on your phone? Use your phone as a reference. But one of the things that I know works is at Artforce Iowa, we use the self-determination theory to kind of guide all of our work. And that means letting young people decide what it is that they're going to do. So you have that natural buy-in. I mean, if I'm a kid and you're like, I want you to draw this and I don't want to draw, but I'm a singer, I'm going to keep playing on my phone. Because one, it's going to make me feel like you're not even listening to me because I'm telling you what I want to do, but you're not actually helping me become a better artist in what I feel is my art form. And so I think, when you have that natural buy-in and you're just like, hey, I don't want you to be on your phone so much. I want you to be making stuff. What's a cool thing that you want to do? And you let them tell you, and then you help them in that. They'll never look at their phone. They'll be so committed and invested in whatever it is that they got to choose to do. And I think sometimes we forget as adults that when we allow kids that kind of autonomy and we kind of give up and surrender to having that control, magical things happen. And I know that's a weird thing to say, surrender some of that control. But when you do, my God, did these kids really dive deep into it and stay engaged for longer periods of time.
Excellent. Now, are you based in Des Moines or where are you based?
We are based in Des Moines, but I keep telling you, we're Artforce Iowa. So we're not Artforce Des Moines. If you want us to come out to where you are, we want to be there. So our programs, we serve kids who identify as refugee immigrants or young people who are involved in the court system, whether it's the juvenile court system or the family court system. And unfortunately, we have young people who are in both court systems, right? So for us, it's where do we need to go? Who wants us there? Can we get there? What does this look like for us to go 200 miles east or north or south or west of Des Moines? But we like to be everywhere. But right now we're exactly where people want us to be. So hopefully we'll have more people opening up their doors to let us come.
Do you go into traditional school settings or do you go into juvenile like halfway houses or?
Yes, we do. We're actually the only arts organization, youth organization, healing center engagement organization that produces and creates art with young people living in the detention centers in the state of Iowa. So we work with young people who are living in shelter and detention centers, young people who maybe are involved in a program outside of juvenile court that will help them stay out of the system as adults. And then we do a lot of work within the school systems. So we work with a lot of teachers. We work with a lot of other nonprofits. For us, it's after COVID, we really pivoted our programs to meet young people where they are, knowing that there were already so many barriers, not only to the arts, but barriers to get to us, that we made a very strategic, intentional move to just take our programmings to where young people are.
You work with English language learners?
Yes.
Oh, very cool. I'm so glad to learn more about your organization.
Yeah.
And Eric, you're based here in Cedar Rapids, and Orchestra Iowa, of course, has a footprint all across the state. But the core offices here in CR. And Leon, where are you based?
I'm the Iowa Alliance Education Office is in my home, and it's in Hampton, Iowa, north central part of the state. So, but we again. Kind of same thing. We work statewide, though. So we have board members from all throughout the state that help us accomplish our mission.
Excellent. Well, now, at what age do we begin with developing, with engaging with kids, with the arts? So, in other words, when do we start getting kids involved in the arts? That's a better way than my awkward question that I'd written.
Leon, you want to go first this time?
Sure. We'll say, how about day one or before day one? Seriously, I think it's one of those things, we had this discussion earlier this week, and I think it's one of those things. I think the arts are so natural. It's just part of us as being human beings. And it's one of the things like we in the education world, it was kind of interesting. We're going and saying, like, if you ask kindergartners, how many of you can sing? How many of you can draw? How many of you can dance? And they all will say yes. You ask a middle schooler, how many can sing, and we thought, what are we doing? And it's the thing that we're looking at in education is fostering that creativity. It's fostering creativity. And because that is what is going to make the world a better place. So really, yeah, we start from day one.
And Eric, I know the orchestra has programming that starts pretty much with infancy. Can you
Yeah,
tell us a little bit about the programs you guys offer?
yeah, we have a Music Together program, which is geared for infants to two. We have a Pied Piper program, which is geared for 2 to 5. Then we have our Music in the Schools program, which goes to second, third, and fourth graders. We have the fourth grade and seventh graders that come to our concerts. But the music education, although we start at age 0, it also doesn't end when you graduate. It's really important that the arts education it's a lifelong learning. Tim teaches a senior class through the University of Iowa. We have our concert conversations before every one of our Masterworks concerts, where people get insight. You know, we never can never have to stop growing and learning when it comes to the arts. And so we want to make sure that for us that our music education is not just stops at K through 12, but it goes before and it goes after.
Now, you have a strings program for elementary ages, don't you?
That's right. So on top of that, for our fifth graders, we have what's called our fifth grade fiddles program. And that means that every single student in Cedar Rapids School District gets 10 group lessons on violin. So we have every single one of those students will get 10 violin lessons. And it's a really great way to put the instrument in their hands and have them maybe think about something they never really thought about before, what opportunities exist for them. And it's by creating those opportunities and creating those experiences that kids can learn and grow and develop and become the best they can be.
Well, and you even have a symphony school and you have choirs that perform with the orchestra. Can you tell us a little bit about what's offered that way?
Sure, yeah. So we also have a school through the symphony, which has 3 separate choirs. Again, a little one, a middle elementary and upper elementary school, and then we also teach private lessons and ensembles. We keep those as low cost as possible. Again, our mission here is it's twofold, really. It's definitely self-serving because we want to grow and foster our next generation of supporters for us, but we also see the impact that arts has on the development of a child. I mean, there's study after study after study after study that shows the impact that being involved in the arts that it has on your social emotional development, on your actual math and science, how much those test scores go up. So, there's a big push, obviously, for STEM. We always like to push that STEAM aspect of that the arts are integral to education. And again, I just moved here a few months ago. I'm from originally, I spent the last 5 years in Louisiana. I really loved my time in Louisiana, but one of the reasons we moved here was because of the education. Iowa has really strong education, and the arts here are a big part of that. It was one of the reasons that actually drew me to move up here. Is the arts and Iowa is something that we can be really, really proud of.
And Christine, what ages do you start engaging with young people?
Yeah, we typically work with the middle school and high school, and that's the age where they start to say, man, I suck at this stuff. And so for us, it's like, how do we build that confidence and that self-worth? But I totally agree with both Leon and Eric that art, we consume art every day, and it's just such a natural thing to the human experience, and the younger, the better. And unfortunately, we're working with young people who typically don't have access or haven't participated in the arts at all. So we're starting with them as fresh babies in middle school, sometimes in high school, and they're very hesitant to even try because they haven't had that experience. If you are an ELL student, you don't typically get to have classes that are arts based because you have to learn English. So if you are an ELL and you start here in America in middle school and you're an ELL up to high school, you don't get to take art. You don't have any art experience. And maybe you'll be lucky if you go to church and you learn how to play guitar there, which a lot of the kids do. But oftentimes, if they don't have that, there is no access to the arts. And so for us, it's been, how do we make young people who feel like they suck to give it a try and then keep trying and get better? And for us, we have an incentive where we say, hey, every year we host the holiday hustle in December. And if you create a lot of art and you sell that art, you get to keep the money.
Oh,
So we've
very
been,
nice.
yeah, we have an online shop. And so it's like, look, you could have your stuff on this online shop, but you have to also learn how to make quality art. You got to be committed to that. And you got to learn financial literacy. So we certify kids in financial literacy so that they can say, this painting is $100 and here's why. Because a lot of the kids are like, well, I think I could sell this for like $5. And we're like, well, what's your time worth? Right. And so teaching them not only the importance of and the value of the arts, but also saying you can make legal money utilizing your craft. And I think the biggest thing for me has been the antidote to loneliness is art. And so if we remind ourselves that art, again, is something that we consume every day, but also it saves lives, it rewires our brain and helps us to find confidence and find community, that maybe we can continue to get more funding for the arts, because it's not just drawing or playing violin or doing theater. It's not just a privilege, right? Art is a thing that is saving so many people from feeling lonely, from mental illness, and it is rewiring our brain. And there's so much science and data behind that. And to be able to provide that kind of access to young people whose brains are still growing and molding, it only prepares them for adulthood. So,
And I know, Eric, a couple of years ago, we had the phenomenal, internationally known pianist Emmanuel Axe come to do a free week-long workshop, or residency rather, with Orchestra Iowa. And one of the components was busing in, I think it was like fifth graders, maybe. It was young, it was students anyway, into the Paramount Theater, which is perhaps a very first experience for them, to not only be in a gorgeous, huge concert hall, but to hear classical music, although he geared it very much to music that would be appealing to young folks. And I was a little worried. So, at what age do you impress upon kids concert etiquette? And I must say, the kids I observed at both of those sessions, both concerts, where they treated him like a rock star. That you could hear a pin drop. It was phenomenal. And there were students on stage who had been pre-selected because of the questions that they had for him. So it was a wonderful learning experience. But I've also been at presentations where the kids were squirmy or giggly or disrespectful. So at what point do you impress upon kids concert etiquette?
Sure. Squirmy and giggly, those are okay. Kids are going to be squirmy. Kids are going to be giggly. You know, there is it's respect for the people around you though. And so for me, it's always like we treat the way people want us to treat us. And so as long as there's that mutual respect that exists, that if you come in and you treat the kids with respect when they get there, often you're met with the same exact things. Um, kids value quality and great things, and so if you're presenting them with that and they feel like they're being respected, then my experience, they often show you that same exact things back. Kids are very smart, they're very intuitive, they know what's going on around them. And so I look at a different example of my it always amazes me when I go to my daughter's daycare. She's 18 months, and there's 6 kids in that room that all sit at their chairs perfectly and eat their food without anyone moving, because they're being taught to do that way, and they understand that that's the expectation, and it's not done with forms of punishment. It's just that the expectation's been set there. And so the earlier you bring a kid to the console and they see that this is just the expectation, then they just behave that way. They just kind of, oh, this is how this works. It's when we don't expose them, or we wait till later and later and later to start doing those things, that they don't know how it works, and they start to feel intimidated. All those other things that can creep in even for adults. The number one reason an adult doesn't come to an orchestra concert, like, that's not for me. I don't know how to act. I don't know what to wear. They're terrified. A young child, they're just going to walk in and have a good time. They don't think about those other things The same way about creating the art, the same things that seep in over time. So the younger you can expose them to it in all forms, the better off you are.
Leon, what are some talking points that you might suggest to teachers who are maybe taking kids on a field trip, whether it's an art museum or a concert or to the ballet or something like that, or theater?
It's interesting you say that because next week we're bringing Ballet Des Moines to Hampton for the first time. We got a grant from Iowa Arts Council and Arts Midwest to do that. And we've done this for the last 10 or 12 years, bringing opera singers to rural Iowa and doing outreach into schools. And so that's one of the things we had talked about is how are we going to prepare the students for that? And I think with what Eric said is exactly right. I think the kids need to know what's expected of them, but we treat them as, so that they have the information coming in. It's no different than an adult coming in. And I think it's really an important skill that we need to teach our students, It was interesting watching, again, one of the things I do is I also observe student teachers and to watch classes after students were online during COVID for 6 months, and then all of a sudden coming back into the classroom. And I was observing fine arts classrooms and learning how important the social skills, the sharing, the communication skills, direction following, all of these things, and acceptance of other students as well, that the fine arts teach, And I think going through, and this is, okay, when you go to a concert, I think it's giving them the information that they need. Okay, this is what we expect. And I think that's really what they want. As an adult, we want the same thing. And so I think it's just being careful of taking the students where they are. Also, what you can expect from a certain age student. What is expected, For example, the students I'm teaching right now range from age 5 to age 70. Okay, so I have a wide range of students I'm working with. So obviously with my 5-year-old, I'm going to focus everything totally differently. But I think the important thing is that we expose them to it so that it becomes to the point so that when we become adults, they say, oh, this isn't for me. This isn't. No, we start engaging people when they're young. And that's where it's going to pay off. We're building future audiences. We're building future support for arts, education, arts and culture in our state.
One thing I noticed, Eric, and I've been going to orchestra concerts for a very, very long time. And when do people applaud? When is it okay to applaud? Sometimes you get some hesitant applause. Sometimes you get a great big bravo, bravissimo, or whatever. Talk to us a little bit about the whole applause factor, because I think that can be intimidating.
So when Mozart was living and performing, after the first movement of a piece they would really like, they would applaud so wildly sometimes that they'd go back and play the first movement again. Like, let's just do it again. It was in the 1800s that there was this big push to like, well, no, we have to play this whole piece through before you can applaud. And, and we don't want to break the form of the first movement to the second movement. And my reaction is if something moves you and there's a break and you want to applaud, then applaud. It's art to be consumed. You'll have some people that don't like that, and that's fine. But if your reaction is that was awesome and you want to show your appreciation, I've never had a musician mad because someone was applauding for them. Like it's the great thing about live art is it is this living thing that happens between the audience and the musicians on stage. That it's not the same as listening to a recording. It's going to be different that time than it is any other time, and it's that there's a give and take that happens between the audience and the artist. And so we try to remove all those barriers. Like, when do I applaud? What do I wear? If you want to wear jeans, wear jeans. If you want to wear a suit, wear a suit. If you want to applaud after the first movement, applaud after the first movement. There is no right or wrong way to enjoy a symphony concert.
I was at Theater Cedar Rapids this past spring for Something Rotten, which I had not seen performed or produced before. And it has wild music, crazy tap dance. Oh my goodness. And people were applauding. I went twice because I loved it so much. People applauded so long that there were actors who were like in a pose where you could just see their bodies like, oh, my arms are killing me. I need to put this person down. But it was just so exciting. And I also love hearing gasps. And I also love when there was a performance, oh gosh, I can't even think which opera it was. But anyway, it was very, very sad. Well, that could be any opera. But you could actually hear sobs in the audience. Oh, La Boheme. And over at Theater Cedar Rapids, when Cedar Rapids Opera, the first time they did it, and you could hear people sobbing. And I thought, wow, that is the impact of arts on an audience. And so that's why I really feel it's so important to nurture our audiences so that they feel comfortable in going there. You know, we used to take two little girls to the orchestra. We'd sit in the front row and we'd leave it intermission because that's about how long they could handle. But, it worked for us. So another thing I'd like to talk about too, I was down at Hampshire last season and there was an orchestra of young adults I think they were from Detroit, and they were primarily musicians of color, but not all of them. And one of the violinists who spoke to the group said that as a young person, he was shocked the first time he went to an orchestra and saw a person of color. He didn't know Black people could play violin. And suddenly it opened up this whole avenue of thinking for him and possibilities for him. And now he's a concert violinist, all because somebody came into his school who looked like he looked. How do we address that in a state that is still predominantly white?
Well, like I'll go ahead and start. Yeah, I mean, it comes down to accessibility, and being intentional with what we're presenting. So I just moved here from Baton Rouge, and that community is primarily non-white, and so it was really important to us because the orchestra was primarily white, like most orchestras. That we were really intentional about what opportunities do we have, who can we bring in, and the biggest change that we made that made the biggest impact, the change that we made that had the biggest impact was changing who was on the podium. When we brought in a Black conductor, that was like a signal that, okay, this is for us, we can attend. And so we did our first concert this year. We had a Black pianist. We have a Black violinist coming later this year. We have a couple of Black singers coming later this year too. And it's about constantly and intentionally putting those opportunities forward where we're creating high art with people that look like the community, that look like, oh, okay, that is for me. And so it's important that we don't just do it once and say we've checked off a box. Look, we did diversity. That's just not something you do. It's gotta seep into your culture and make it part of what is the expected norm moving forward. But it really starts. One of the biggest challenges we have in the orchestra field is that we have to start that at a very young age. When we do auditions, one of the great things about the orchestra field is the auditions are completely blind. So someone stands behind a screen and they play, and it's the best person that play wins. Well, when you go to an audition, it's going to be primarily white and Asian people auditioning. So you're going to get primarily white and Asian people winning the jobs because that's the numbers. So what we really need to do is get instruments into the hands of young people of color, teach them from a young age, give them those opportunities earlier, so that way by the time they're able to come play with professional orchestras, we have a more even playing field of candidates that can win those positions. It's very difficult for us to change the makeup of our orchestra when we don't have a makeup candidate pool that looks like the community. So it really starts, it's a long, long play, but we need young people of color getting the same exact opportunities of non-people of color to get those opportunities to perform.
And Leon, you've had some experience with that, even in your town, haven't you? Or with the artists you presented?
Yes, yeah. Just kind of dovetailing what Eric said. I think the key word there is intentional. Is that we have to be very intentional. Okay, the community I live in is Hampton, about 4,600 people. We have about a 50% non-white population in our school. And it's one of those things we've been able the last how many years intentionally bringing in performers of color into our community. The last 2 years, we were able to bring an opera singer in from El Salvador. We had a grant through Arts Midwest, and then we also our local arts council was able to support this. And one of the strongest things out of this whole thing is we would do outreach into the schools And even before he did his concert performance, it was like, oh my gosh, there's a singer there that looks like me. Is this something I even could do? I have never seen a Hispanic opera singer before, and 50% of the audience was Hispanic. And when that happened, to me, the concert was secondary. The concert really was secondary. It was done. It was done. What we wanted to accomplish was done, but we had to be intentional in doing it. And the other thing too is like we talk about people on the podium, but also the music that musicians choose to select. Are we being intentional that oh my gosh, yeah, you know, composers of color, female composers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's slowly, that's changing. Because when I work with young teachers, they go, of course, this is the way it should be. And to me, the thing that's very inspiring is the teachers I work with that are of color. They say that I want to inspire the next generation so that young students can see someone who looks like me can do this.
Well, and even for me, growing up in Mediapolis, a small town in Southeast Iowa, my mother, who graduated in, I think, 48 or 49, had a classmate, a male classmate, who became a professional opera singer. And so anytime he came back and sang in our church, I was just transfixed because my mom wanted to be an opera singer. But at that time, in those days, women basically after high school, they became nurses or teachers or secretaries. And then they got married and had babies and became housewives. So that opportunity wasn't really readily available. So I think it's very cool to get professional artists into the rural areas and show them that you don't have to grow up in Des Moines or Cedar Rapids or Chicago to create for yourself a life in the arts. I mean, I've created a life for myself in the arts. And, I'm from a very small town. Christine, what are you seeing or what do you observe when some of the young people you work with see somebody who looks like them?
Yeah, I first want to just say thank you, Eric and Leon, for the work that you do, because it's clear that it's intentional. And I think as the only person of color in this room, right, who is Asian but doesn't I grew up in a home that was very anti-art because my parents came as refugees in the 70s into Des Moines. They didn't see art as anything important. And so I think about my own experience and the experience of the kids that I work with. And oftentimes the culture isn't there where we feel welcome to even come. And so I think, when I hear Eric and Leon talk about the previous question on, how do you teach etiquette? I mean, that's one of the reasons why a lot of people in our communities of color don't want to come out, because they haven't had that experience. They don't know what they're supposed to look like. They don't have the money to buy nicer clothes. So then they feel like it's a privilege to go and I don't deserve that. And so I think being able to first create an intentional space and making sure that it is not only a physically safe space, but a psychologically safe space, that if I show up, they're not going to be like, oh, well, here's this chink coming into this space, right? Or here's this Black person who looks like this, they shouldn't be here. Because when we feel that way, we don't want to come back. So not only do you lose supporters, but you also lose the potential of what that individual could bring to the arts, right? And then it becomes a trickle effect where now it's like, hey, you know what? Our community, we don't do the symphony. They're rude. They don't like people like us. So then you get more and more communities who don't want to be a part of it because they've never felt welcomed. And I think oftentimes the arts is a place where everyone is welcomed, but we're not felt welcomed because we look different, right? And so I just want to say thank you for creating such intentional spaces that aren't just about checkmarking a space, but that you're also intentionally thinking about things like, hey, we want to have more people in our symphony who look different. That means we got to get the hands of those instruments into those kids, because that's solving the problem and not just, well, it's not our problem. It's whoever's coming, that's what we can get. It's actually identifying the issue and that it's not having access, right? And so, for me, I'm so proud because at Art Force Iowa, we are 87% BIPOC led. So for me, our artists are a deep reflection of the young people that we serve. And so the young people can see us and say, oh my God, I can be an artist. I can sing. I can make art. Oh, I can be a fashion artist. I can do this. Wow, I didn't know that I could. And so when young people see that, they really start having hope and aspiration. And at the end of the day, that's all we want, right? We all want to have the ability to hope for the kind of life we want to live. So it's such a big deal to not only show that there are people who look like them, but you got to create that space. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I do not care if you have artists who look like me. Because if I walk into that space and you make me feel unwelcomed, I will not come back. And most people of color, I would say, feel the same way because it starts to feel like a checkbox. It starts to feel like, oh, you just want my money. Okay, I'm not coming back. But when you're met with intentionality and it's saying, no, you matter. So we're going to choose songs that showcase your language, your stories matter. So we're going to do a theater project based on this story that is similar to yours. That's when I'm like, okay, now they're being intentional. And when they do it more and you're doing it more and more, and it becomes such a normal experience, I mean, that's when you know you belong. That's when you feel like you're welcomed, right? And I feel like we're slowly getting there, but changing the attitudes of every individual person is very hard because there will always be people who just don't like me because of the way I look. And that is not my job to change that, right? I see that as a community that we need to be able to do it together. And I don't need to take on that responsibility. But I do feel like when we create those spaces, that's when we start to see more and more BIPOC folks come out because it is welcoming. So Eric and Leon, kudos. Y'all are killing it. And it sounds so cool that those are the things you're thinking of. Because oftentimes when I talk to other folks, that's not the solution that they want to have. The solution is the easier route, which is, well, they're not coming, so we'll send them stuff, and if they come, they come, but if they don't, then it's not our responsibility.
I loved last season at the orchestra when they had a bandoneon player from, I believe, Brazil was his country of origin, but he's been in the US for 25 years. But I can't imagine too many of those audience members who are stalwart symphony goers had ever seen classical accordion before. And that was pretty cool. I loved it. And Eric, I know I think you've just started a program because I saw it during the Rhapsody in Blue concert where there were a lot of young people of color sitting in a row like they were a class or a group that came and either at greatly reduced ticket prices, or I know there's also some free tickets for students who come with their adults. Can you talk a little bit about what I was seeing in the audience?
We partnered with the Academy SPS here, which is in Cedar Rapids, which is the Academy for Scholastic and Personal Success, which is a really great organization that takes brown and black students. They have their own cohort that they work together, and they work with them from elementary school all the way through high school, and just teach them what it's like to be successful, both scholastically and personally. And so we saw this great opportunity. We're bringing in a lot of black artists and said, hey, again, let's give them opportunities to go do a class with that artist beforehand so they can meet that artist, get to know them, see what opportunities exist with them in the arts, and then come to a concert. And so that program is completely free for those students to attend. Again, it's about giving that access. And to Christine's point earlier, the reality is in my art form, largely for a long time, people of color just frankly weren't welcome. Now that's the reality. So when she talked about that slow change, it is a slow change because for a long time, that's just the reality of the world that we lived in. We were playing all, Western European music by mainly white men that were playing it for other white people. And so as we change the programming, as we change the people on stage, It is it's a slow progress, but that idea of that's not for me is not unfounded. That was true and it existed. And so it's a lot of work that my industry has to do to say, no, no. Orchestra Iowa, here in my example, Orchestra Iowa exists to provide classical music to everyone in the corridor region. That's why we're here. Not to this person, to that person, but everyone. Everyone is welcome. There are no barriers to attend. And so it does take a while though of earning that trust of communities that frankly don't trust you because they have no reason to trust you because it never has been for them. And so we're not we are like, at least I'm acutely aware of that and of the challenges that we have to face. That it's going to take a lot of time and effort, and but it's important because that's one, it's important for our survival. Two, again, we get back to like, especially when I was in Baton Rouge, like, if we're only performing for the white people here, we're literally alienating half of our potential revenue streams. But the other half of it is too, it's like, but we exist for everybody. That's our mission. We're a nonprofit that's here to serve everybody. And it gets back to that thing about the education and the youth part of it, that we have to start at the young ages. And so that's why every single Cedar Rapids student will have, second, third, fourth, fifth, another time in fourth grade and seventh grade. Doesn't matter what school you go to, doesn't matter what you look like, you're all going to get these opportunities.
And we've got the music of Harry Potter coming up.
Yeah, it affects what we do on our main stage stuff as well. We're going to put music that is different out there. We're not just going to play standard classical music. Even our first concert, on our first Masterworks concert of the season, we did a William Grant Still, the Symphony Number One. He's an African American composer, but that was influenced by well, no, Gershwin was influenced by his symphony, and so we put some Gershwin on there. Then we also put a jazz quartet up there with a couple of people from Iowa City, a couple of people of color that were going to come in and just by yourselves, just play some jazz music, to show that how these things tie in together, and to see that these different art forms are connected, and how much influence Black art forms have had on what we're doing in the classical music. And so it's important that I'm big on not having, okay, we're going to do this music for these people over here. We're going to do this music for these people over here. We can meld all of those things together, and people like both of these things, and we can put that together, and they can exist on the same program.
Leon, talk to me a little bit about the sort of silo concept and breaking that you mentioned the other day. I loved that.
Oh, it's funny I was thinking the exact same thing. Okay, we were talking about, really, that's how the Alliance came about, was that we realized just in arts education, we needed to break down the silos between the arts forms, that we speak with a unified voice, that we all teach the whole child. And I think that's a thing that's super important. We take that concept and then we just broaden that to the entire community. We break silos down. How we can do that, again, it all has to be intentional. So every program that we do, we're very intentional that we have this model of, this is what arts education looks like, and it's for everyone. It's for everyone. So when a student comes into your classroom, it's really interesting. One of the questions I ask my student teachers is, what do you want people to say about your classroom? What do you want people to get out of your classroom? And again, these were music people, but the first things that came about, I want my kids to feel safe. I want my kids to feel valued. I want my kids to feel seen and heard. And then maybe the fourth one down is, in this case, music, which to me was the perfect answer. I said, that's what I want to hear, because art and education cannot happen if those first three things are not in place. It's like just referring to things earlier. Well, I'm not welcome at the symphony. I'm not welcome at the art gallery. I'm not welcome here at this because I don't fit in. So, it's the breaking down of those silos, that what the art and art education is a reflection of the community. And the minute it's a reflection of the community, then everybody will join in, because I see myself in what they are doing.
Oh, that is so cool. What I love most when I go to wedding receptions and after the bride and groom do their dance and the parents do their dance thing, then usually the first people out on the dance floor are, like 2, 3, 4 years old. And they just dance like nobody's watching because they don't care. And they just dance till they drop. And then I feel like in junior high, everybody gets awkward and the school dances are dreadful. And they feel like everybody's looking at them because they kind of are. And, and it stays kind of dreadful even through high school. How do you bridge that gap between I'm free to be me and do whatever I want to the music or the finger painting or whatever? How do you bridge that gap between those years and the awkward years?
I think it's a couple things. One, it's what Leon just said. It's about creating those safe spaces for students so they feel like they can just be themselves and not have to be worry about the repercussions of that. Two, we are a highly competitive culture. So for the longest time, I told everyone that I hated coloring. I hate coloring. I hate coloring. I hate coloring. That's because I wasn't good at coloring. But art's not about being good at it. So when I started having children, I started coloring with my kids, and I'm still not good at it. But I actually like this is actually kind of fun. Actually, like I enjoy coloring. But we're so obsessed culturally about like, I have to be good at something to want to do it. Art, you can enjoy art and not be good at it. That's one of the great things about art. You can appreciate, you can have fun, you can sing and be bad, and that's do you enjoy it? Then do it. And so it's a giving that freedom that art, if you want to make a living at it, you probably gotta be good at it. But outside of that, art is not about being good. It's a form of expression. And that's what it's there to exist to do. And so making that known and available to is a really important part of that, where it's not about it's art is not about comparing yourself to someone else. Well, they're better at this than I am. Okay, you're different at this than they are, and that's cool too. Do you enjoy doing it? Then keep doing it because that's what art to me is really about.
Mhm.
And Leon, how do you advise like middle school teachers? I did my first and last leg of student teaching in middle school art because they were doing string art, which I had never done. And eventually my supervising teacher let me do a unit on pastels, which I knew how to do. But there were like 2 or 3 kids in that class who even cared, and the rest were just there because they had to be. How do you advise middle school teachers to get past the, "Oh, this is so weird"?
It's interesting you say that because that was one of the questions I had in class the other night. And the students came up with the answers that it's finding out what do the students want? What are they interested in? You know, what, and it's just once they found that and you found this common language, it could be video games, it could be this, it could be soccer, it could be whatever. But the minute you go in and find what makes them tick, and then all of a sudden you hit that connection with them. Because I think anything, whether when we're trying to break down barriers, when we're trying to pull down silos, when we're trying to engage people, everything is connections. It's finding that the teacher actually does care about what I like, what I'm thinking about. And the thing that's so cool is that happens naturally in the fine arts classroom. It happens naturally because everyone can look at the same thing and draw it 20 different ways. Everyone can look at the same piece of music and I interpret it this way. I interpret it that way. It's going to be interesting. Like I said, we're bringing ballet dancers to Hampton next Sunday. And it was interesting. Even one of the high school principals says, I have never seen a ballet. He was really excited about it. And that's the thing I'm looking at. So one of the things we're looking at is we're looking at how to introduce this to an audience. And what we're going to be talking about is a creative process. That's how we're focusing on is communication and the creative process. And it just happens to be through dance. It could be through anything else. So I'm really excited to see how it all turns out.
Christine, what do you find are the most not necessarily sought out, but perhaps the most accessible forms of arts to work with your clientele, with your young people?
Well, I'm just going to take it back to what I said earlier, self-determination. So if we allow kids to decide what that looks like, it's my job to go find someone who can do that.
Mm.
So, thankfully we live in Des Moines and there's a huge pool of artists here who do all kinds of things. So when kids say, I just want to break dance, I'm like, all right, cool. I'm gonna go find a break dancer for you. right? I just want to do ballet. Okay, cool. I'm going to find someone for you. But when we go into the classroom, we give them 3 options so that they still have autonomy. And then we say, as a class, we're going to do this democratically. We're going to vote, right? We're going to participate in this as a group, and we're going to decide what we're going to do as a group so that there is autonomy in what that looks like. But in the classrooms, it's a lot easier to do things that are more visual based because I don't know. I don't think we all want to see 32 kids breakdancing all at once. Someone's going to break a neck. Someone might kick somebody, and then it's like, oh, how do I explain that this kid got a black eye because we were breakdancing? So like there are just some things that we cannot do. Can we do drum circles with 32 kids though? Absolutely. And it's so cool because when you do a drum circle, you're getting kids to recognize the collective power, but then also saying, oh, I play a role in this too. Like I got to keep up with the beat and I'm part of this collective. So I'm important too in maintaining this community. So we do all kinds of things and we like to do experiment. There was a time where we would do nothing but oh no, I feel like so lame because I can't remember what it's called, but the kids would kill me. It's squishy and they would make it all the time. Slime.
Oh yeah.
We're making slime art, right? Because that's what all they wanted to make. And it was like, okay, we're gonna make slime from shaving cream and we'll have a lot of fun in making slime art. And so it's really figuring out like what Leon said, what do the kids enjoy? And that has always 100% helped us in maintaining our engagement rate. And the kids get excited when we come back because they're like, oh, cool. I can't wait to finish my project. So some of the cool things that we've done is we have worked with a portrait artist where kids got to draw their own portrait and learn from someone who does that. Kids got to create their own portraits using wire. So we have like wire art portraits that are really, really cool. Kids have gotten to learn how to do scrapbooking art, which is really neat and a lot harder than people think because it's not just gluing things down. But it can be anything from jewelry making to photography and learning how to use a real nice Sony, Nikon, Canon camera. And so for us, it's always how do we give kids that autonomy so that they know we respect what they want to learn, but also how do we get them to respect each other in making that decision? Because once we make that decision, we're all doing it, right? And how do we get to that and arrive to that solution? It's really cool because kids are like, oh, okay, I guess I don't have to learn to do this because I really care about my friend. Or, well, I really want to learn this because I'm already doing it. And then everyone is like, oh, okay. Well, then we don't need to learn to do that. If you're already really good at this and you want to learn more, let's just do this. And one of the things I really love, it's that we've been able to create a mural in the school. So now we have these 10-foot, 20-foot long murals created by young people who are working with professional muralists, and then they get to paint on the walls. And that not only shifts the culture of that one classroom, but it shifts the culture of that entire school. Because now that whole school is like, damn, my school is so cool. I got this mural. Look, I'm going to take a picture with it. And then we get teachers who are like, man, that's really cool. I want to take a picture of that. So we start to see how art can elevate a culture. And we just want young people to lead that effort. And for us, it's just such a huge privilege to be able to find those artists who can work with them when they decide that's what they want to do. So I'm going to keep leaning into self-determination, y'all. Let the kids decide because they will keep doing it.
Yep. I know in all the years I was making and teaching theater, that's where I found my community in high school. I theater and music, musical theater. But even when I was teaching, I had a little boy in elementary, and this was before we knew much about the spectrum. I don't even think that was a word yet that was being used. So basically, he liked to hang from the pipes. And but anytime I asked him a question, he always knew the answer. So part of him was hearing it and processing it. And the kids at first looked at him like, well, he's a little weird, but they got over it. And just like the little girl who basically could sing one note and kind of sounded like a frog every time she sang with such gusto. And the other kids were like, I don't know. But they got over it. They accepted her because she was so into it. And so, anyway, we have about 5 minutes left, and we've talked about a lot of the um, issues that I wanted to get through. But, the reality is, not everybody's going to be a professional performer. How do we help nurture the next generation of audience and donors? Eric, I feel like this is your wheelhouse.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. I mean, the majority of people are not going to make a living doing art, but it doesn't mean that they're not going to be our art appreciator for the rest of their life. And so art is such an important thing to what makes the human experience so amazing. And so we love when we refer to the SOBs in our world. That's the symphonies, the operas, and the ballets. Those things are so important to have a vital community. And again, when you get people to going at a young age and you give them something, when you show it to them, then it's easier to get them to come back. When they can become supporters of that art form. And so it's very difficult to get someone that's never come before to all of a sudden want to start going. So that's why this education part at a young age. And just like everything else, it's about teaching them that they have to invest in the things that they value. So if we value the arts as a community, we have to invest in it. It's similar to like if we value education, we invest in education. It's teaching that at a very young age that we have to invest in the things that we find important. And I think many things are important, health and human services, but arts is one of those things. If we don't have that, then we really lose what really defines us as a civilization. Right? Art is what defines civilization. So it's impressing upon that early and often. And then once they start to see that and they can see the impact that it has, especially as they get older and they like, wow, I experience this. I want to make sure that my kids can have those same sorts of experiences. It becomes this cyclical thing that builds upon itself.
And you see companies becoming more open to making matching grants. Like if I work for a big company, well, I do work for a big company, but if I choose to donate to an arts organization, my company might match that. Do you find that as a kind of an inroads that's happening?
Yeah, I think a lot of companies have gotten away from, hey, this is the things that we give to. And it's like, well, we want to give to the things that our employees find important. So instead of the company to determine what's important, it's like, well, okay, we're going to match whatever you're giving to. And so we have some really large employers here. So I'm less interested in trying to get those employers to give us funds as much as connecting with their employees, getting them to come to our events, to realize that the orchestra here is not just this institution. It is people that live and work here. The musicians of the Orchestra Iowa are people that live and work in this community. So you're not supporting just this monolith of classical music. You're supporting your neighbor when you come out and you support the arts. That this is not that's really what you're supporting. And so getting them to see that and understand that is really important. I really try to put our musicians in the spotlight as much as possible. It's difficult with our art form. They come on stage, they sit there, they play, and then they leave. They never say a word. They might as well be robots. So I really try to get them out into the community talking about who they are. They are highly educated and talented professionals. We often joke that there are more doctors on our stage than you'll see in most hospitals. Over half of our orchestra has doctorates. I don't think we have a single person that doesn't have a master's degree in music. These are highly trained professionals. And so to keep them in a community, you have to support them. And that's just the reality of it. So it's important that we make those efforts.
Thank you so much. What a great discussion this has been. We're about to wrap up, and I would highly encourage everyone. We have a little bit of time left in our conference this year, and please join us at 1 o'clock to hear Jen Loeb. She is a mountain climber who has climbed the 7 highest peaks within I don't know what systems. I haven't even walked up Mount Trashmore, so hats off to this woman, and just kind of hear her story and hear what she ticks. And this has just been wonderful. I hope that our audience members have come away with some great ideas and ways that they can help encourage the arts and see the value of the arts with young people. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. Bye now.